What's poppin', people? It's Dante. Today I'm going to be teaching you why you should ask for permission in street photography. This is one of those, sacrilegious topics that you cannot discuss in this genre of photography. However, I believe that there is a power to asking for permission that is overlooked, and I believe can be the superpower that can unlock the door for you to create more compelling photographs. Because I believe that the secret to more success in street photography has more to do with sociology than anything else. Studying human behavior and the way in which you engage with life is ultimately what's on display in the photographs you make. And so I give you permission to ask for permission, right? This is something that I believe a lot of street photographers don't realize that they can do because they see and understand the candid nature of the genre and disregard the fact that you are a human being who has a multifaceted way of engaging with life. Just because people are making pictures in a particular way that you see on social media, right? You see these degenerate New York street photographers running around with the flash and just getting up in people's faces and making haphazard compositions. Doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing. You can engage with this thing in your own unique way. There's no rules. There's no guidelines. There is no one way to practice street photography, and I'm here to dispel that myth for you. Because I believe that ultimately photography has nothing to do with photography. Photography has everything to do with how you engage with humanity out there in the open world on the front lines of life, and this is so critical. This is the most important thing that I've learned over the past decade of traveling the world to various locations in many different situations, from villages to slums to mountaintops to bustling markets. I've realized that the key that unlocks the door to these multifaceted experiences that I have all derive from the way in which I interact on the streets. It has little to do with the visual game of putting together a composition. Photography has everything to do with the physical act of you walking through a city, engaging with humanity, right? That's really it. And so the big misconception about asking for permission is that it's going to ruin the moment. I hear a lot of people say that it's not real street photography if you ask for permission, where this maybe will kill the spontaneity. But I think that this is furthest from the truth, because the reality is by asking for permission, you can deepen the moment and create a more impactful photograph. And ultimately, by asking for permission and interacting at a scene, your confidence will grow through these connections that you make, giving you that ability to go back out there on repeat, practicing your street photography. And so asking for permission will allow you to work a scene. And this is one of those key techniques that we can apply to our practice to increase our likelihood of making stronger photographs, where shooting multiple variations at a scene will be of benefit to you in the long run. Because sometimes, the first shot, it might work out, but a lot of the times you're going to have to try different approaches. You're going to have to try a wide shot, a close-up, a high angle, a low angle, use the background or without the background. I think ultimately when you're working a scene, you're going to give yourself the ability to create more compelling imagery due to the simple fact that you are there, you are present, and you're engaged in the moment, watching life unfold with your camera, allowing yourself to sort of photograph through something that's occurring. Like here we have this example that I photographed along the sea in Naples. And so when I made this photograph, I was on vacation with my brother. And you can see here this contact sheet behind the scenes as I watch as this man is pulling the watermelon out of the sea. And I was shooting at a very close-up angle at first, as you can see at the top of the contact sheet, as the man takes the watermelon out of the water, splits it in half, and I noticed and observed as there is this man who is swimming in the background. And so, I tried to plug him in my composition, and I had that ability to recognize these different moments that were occurring simultaneously at this scene because I was spending time here, because I had permission. And, the fun thing is, I was here. I was present when I pressed the shutter. I was sunbathing here with these guys. I was swimming at the scene, and then as the man shared the watermelon amongst his friends and me and my brother, I pressed the shutter at the decisive moment where everything aligned. I wasn't hunting. I was simply sunbathing. And my brother, he was there. He's a chef and was practicing his culinary, techniques and, studying his recipes and making pastas. And, we would go to the markets and he would cook food. And, I wasn't there on some like photography trip. I was in Napoli because, I'm Italian. I'm actually a dual citizen. My brother and I, we were just chilling on the rocks. We were just in our element. Our family actually comes from Caserta, which is just right nearby, about 25 minutes from Napoli. And so we have been visiting this location since we were little boys. And this is a place that, you know, is close to us. And we were just there and just enjoying our time. You know, I wasn't there, looking to make photographs. I was enjoying the sun. I was kicked up on the rocks, and we were chilling there for like 2 or 3 hours. And then eventually this scene just unfolded naturally. And of course I had my camera and I pulled it out and we were making photographs, and these guys were feeding us live fish right off the rocks, these little shellfish. And we were enjoying watermelon with these guys, diving into the water, hanging out, and looking out to Mount Vesuvio. And it was just a beautiful day. And then when I came to make the picture, as things started to align, I made sure to position myself physically in relationship to the scene to synthesize the moment, that sort of beautiful human element of these 3 Italian men engaged at the scene with watermelon, with the formal compositional decisions that I include here in this frame. And very simply, I will break down exactly my thought process when making this photograph. And so firstly, as I noticed the man swimming in the background, I made a very simple decision to try with the best of my ability to include him within the frame. And so I made sure to position my body in relationship to the swimmer, first and foremost. Secondarily, this man here on the right-hand side fit in very naturally due to my positioning. And so we have 1/3 of the frame filled in the foreground. And then finally, as I was adjusting my body in relationship to the swimmer and the foreground, the middle ground here of this man on the left-hand side who was cutting the watermelon fit together in my visual puzzle. And these things come together naturally. And then you have this very simple rhythm with the watermelon from right to left into the center of the frame, where we have a very beautiful spiral shape that is elegantly formed in a very easy to read composition that I like to say. It's very easy to read, right? Where we have 3 different elements that's broken up within the frame. 1, 2, 3. Foreground, middle ground, background. 3 slices of watermelon. A clean background where I'm using the sea. I decided to eliminate the horizon line. I decided to eliminate the sort of mountain in the background and solely focused on the men. And I think this ambiguous space of the water creates a much more elegant frame and a much more beautiful backdrop for this particular scene. And things fell together naturally as I photographed through the moment and was there and present and engaged with life. And that's how I believe we can elevate our street photography game, is by spending time in the scenes that we photograph, actually engaging at the moment we press the shutter. And then we become a fly on the wall. Then we have the permission to make pictures candidly, and we can make a photograph that is elevated from a quick candid snapshot to something more compelling and impactful, where there's this, emotional closeness to the subject, where it's not just this physical proximity. And so I encourage you to be a human first, be a photographer second, just bring your camera out there and you kind of are just living your life. That's kind of how I like to look at this. I'm just curious about life. I'm curious about the world. Here in Mumbai, India, you can see how I work this scene. I'm walking through Bandra here in the alleys, and I noticed this man drinking tea or selling tea, and I just went up to him, and I had open body language. I smiled. I had my posture open, and he wound up giving me free tea. And so I'm drinking free tea. I go and I sit down in the shop, and then I make another photograph of the man that's right across from me. I didn't ask for permission verbally to this man here, but my body language says everything. My charisma, the way in which I connect with people through smiling, through complimenting, through asking questions, through simply being human and being real, this is going to speak louder than words, right? And so this sort of philosophy of engaging with humanity as a street photographer is all in the practice of actually going out there and doing the thing. No amount of studying and watching my technique and approach is going to help you. But if you actually apply this to your practice and utilize this approach to engaging with the streets, you can see results in your street photography and find yourself making more successful images. And this is something that I hope that comes across in this video, because there is no secret pill that I can give you that will make you a better street photographer. But if you simply become a much more open and engaged human, much more curious and authentic through your body language, that can be the key that unlocks the door to more success in your photography. And so here we have a photograph that I made of a mother and child here alongside the railroad in Bandra, Mumbai, India. And this connection of physical closeness and this sort of physical proximity I have is elevated due to the emotional closeness that I have when I press the shutter with the subjects. And I think that's what reflects back in the photographs we make. And so, yeah, once again, I encourage you to experience life and just bring your camera for the ride. I can't stress this enough. A lot of the times we're caught up with the outcome of the photograph. Detach from the outcome of you making a successful photograph and just go out there into the world, experience life with your curiosity and your courage at the forefront. Follow your intuition, and then you'll have your camera and you'll be there, and you'll be prepared to press the shutter when the moment arises, right? And so I believe that closeness isn't just physical, like I've been saying. The emotional connection that you have with the subject is much greater than the physical proximity that your lens is in relationship to the subject. I think that's like one of the funny things in street photography. It's like, you go to New York and there's all these guys, they're really trying to get close, but they have no emotional closeness to life. They're just kind of running and gunning, right? And so you gotta care. You have to, remember that you are a human. You're not just a camera and a lens and trying to put it as close to someone's face as physically possible. And so I believe that the photographs that we make is a reflection of the relationships that we build with the people that we photographed. And look, this is coming from someone who, I of course, I'm born and raised here in Philly. I shoot in Philly. I learned in Philly, early on, at the end of my time in high school and whatever, like over a decade ago. But it wasn't until, I started studying in Baltimore and I walked around the neighborhood in Baltimore that I started to make more impactful photographs and really elevated my game. Because when I started working in Baltimore, and this is a photograph I made of a child playing in a tree in Baltimore, I had to learn how to approach the streets in my unique way. And so I like to say I approach the streets with a documentary approach, but that's mostly just a philosophy where I'm not afraid to ask for permission. I'm not afraid to converse with people on the street corners, because when I walked around the streets of Baltimore in this particular neighborhood, Sandtown, Winchester, there was nobody on the streets. It was pretty much barren, and you would see pockets of people in certain situations, maybe on stoops and doors or in doorways by people's homes, playgrounds, etc. And so I had to learn a new way of engaging with the streets. I actually had to build connections with people and build trust so that I could go back out there onto the streets over and over again and practice my street photography. And so, this is how I learned, and just sharing it with you. And so start with permission, because when you break the ice, you're gonna get more yeses than nos. And the more times you put in this rep of you asking for permission and getting yeses from others, you're gonna build your charisma and you're gonna build your confidence. And I'm actually gonna share with you a really useful technique, a really useful trick that I use. And this is something that I've done very early on when I started to travel. And so when I traveled to Jerusalem to study abroad, I started to bring an Instax camera with me. And initially I thought that I would use it just for myself to create memories. However, once I got into the little communities and neighborhoods with my camera and I had the Instax with me, I started to naturally pull it out and actually gift strangers prints. And this became the superpower that unlocked so many opportunities for me to create more successful photographs. And so I'm going to share with you exactly why this technique matters. And so essentially, the Instax camera can build trust instantly when you're an outsider on the inside in a community, where you make photography a gift. This is going to transcend language and cultural barriers, and it's going to open doors for you. Literally, like this is a photograph of me sitting next to a Palestinian woman inside of her home. I was invited in for food, for tea, for coffee, and I spent some time with these people and made pictures in these different scenes and gifted Instax pictures to these strangers. And the Instax technique of me gifting prints to strangers led me onto so many numerous adventures where here's a real world example of this adventure I went on with these brothers in Jericho, where when I was in Jericho, I spent time in the mosques, and I was curious about learning about Islam, and so I would go to the mosques to pray and to observe and watch Palestinian life. And so these men noticed me inside the mosque and my curiosity, and so they invited me to their home. We drank some tea, some coffee, and they invited me on a road trip to the top of the Wadi Kelt mountain range, overlooking Jericho, the Dead Sea, and Jordan in the distance. And it was an incredible experience. And so here are some of the Instax pictures from that trip. And so essentially we went for this road trip to the top of the mountain, and we wound up having a beautiful cultural experience where we were dancing and singing, and it was just such an incredible view up in the mountain range, looking out at the desert. I mean, it was just a magical experience. However, there was a moment when we got to the peak of the mountain and the car broke down. And as the car broke down, I had an opportunity to jump out and make a picture here. And so actually, if we break down this photograph, I'll show you exactly how it was made. And so essentially in these moments, you have to be able to respond extremely quickly. And, you know, it's the heat of the moment. A car breaks down. How are you going to make an impactful composition? You know, I had to make a very simple decision to elevate this frame. And that simple decision was including this car in the foreground, right? This first element is what's adding depth and layers to this picture. In the middle ground, we have, of course, the second element being the men gathered around the car that broke down. And then thirdly, we have the mountain range here with the clouds and the blue sky in the background being the third element. And so 1, 2, 3, foreground, middle ground, background. This is how I see the world a lot of the times when I'm out there on the street, solving these sort of visual puzzles, if you will. And so initially I made a photograph and it fell flat because I didn't include that car in the foreground, but making that simple compositional decision by including it in the foreground elevated the moment to a new height. And again, this all stemmed through me using the Instax technique, through me simply gifting portraits to strangers, being curious and open, being a human first, bringing my camera for the ride. And then here I am on a ride to the top of the mountains, making photographs and experiencing things that I can only ever dream of. And so the world is a playground, right? This is a very important idea because I believe that if you go out there in the world like a big kid, you know, think of a kid eager to wake up in the morning, eager to go to the playground, eager to go out there and explore, curious about life, picking up the leaves, climbing up trees, right? I think this is how we should be when we're on the street. You know, for me, I found myself in the masjid, and because of my curiosity, it led me on this adventure. And so when you go out there and you play, and you go out there like you're a kid, exploring on the playground, not taking yourself so seriously like you're this serious documentary photographer, and you put your photography hat on, and you put your camera on your neck, and you wipe your lens down, and you get your vest with your, you know, rechargeable batteries. You know, no, just go out there and have fun, you know, because that's ultimately what I believe should guide you on the street is your joy. And when you follow that joy and that bliss, you will find yourself with more success. And so the playground mindset is really critical in my practice. You know, you can see here as I work this scene in Mumbai, India, I'm photographing as these children are playing at the playground. And, you know, after I make this picture, I'm actually playing at the scene. You know, I was there playing. You know, this is something I've carried with me all throughout the world. When I see a scene unfold and there's children playing, I'm playing there too. You know, I want to play. I'm just a big kid. And, you know, there's a moment here where I'm playing cricket, right? And they have you know, this little like area in their village where they play cricket, and I stumbled across this scene and I was starting to photograph them playing cricket, and then they gave me the bat, and then I pulled up and I started playing, you know, and I never played this sport before, but it was fun to just have a good laugh and share this memory with these people in this new place and try new things. And, you know, I think if you go out there like a kid with this sort of wonder and curiosity to explore, to dance, to sing, to climb, to see the world anew, I believe is the mindset that is the playground mindset. And so here we have a photo to wrap things up here from Mumbai where I'm photographing a very dynamic scene. We have striking light and color, lots of layers. We have a moment of a boy throwing a basketball, color matches from the shirt to the background. We have a dog peering around this man's ear in the foreground. And then finally, a religious sculpture there in the background. And, these kind of moments, I believe, are important to break down here, because you need to understand, I'm not just running up and snapshotting away. I have open body language. I'm smiling and confident. I'm approaching a family, like this is their home. You can't just run up into people's grill and just start snapping pictures like it's New York. Okay, so you have to approach the streets in a nuanced way. And so by asking for permission with your body language and your gestures and your body, just you smiling and being open, can then be the key that unlocks the doors to you having more success in your photography, allowing you to then work a scene, allowing you to then make a photograph with more complexity. And so I feel like this is just something that's not talked about enough in street photography. And yeah, it's just something that I wanted to share, because I think somebody needs to give you the permission to ask for permission. It's not this like sacrilegious thing, right? We're human beings first, right? We just have cameras with us. And I think that's important to highlight. And so, yeah, photography is a reflection of your courage and your heart. Meaning, photography has nothing to do with photography. Photography has everything to do with how courageous you are, how curious you are. And then that's what's on display in the photographs you make. And so remember that, and use permission and asking for permission as this sort of excuse, right? Use the camera as the excuse for you to see the world, to explore, to create memories, and to learn and grow, and to just experience new things. And you will cherish these stories for the rest of your life. And when you simply use photography as a vehicle for you to explore the world this way, it becomes so meaningful and enriching. And I'm just eager to share that with you, because you don't have to play street photography the same way everyone else seems to be playing it. You can experience this in a very nuanced way, in a human way, in a real and authentic way. And so thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, you can feel free to visit my website at dantesisofo.com, where I have a couple different ebooks under my books tab that are free. We have the contact sheets guide here, where you can see the behind the scenes of how I make photographs. I have the Ultimate Ricoh GR Street Photography Guide, breaking down my settings, technique, and the snapshot philosophy. I also have the Mastering Layering in Street Photography Guide, where I break down my thoughts on layering, which I believe to be the foundation of composition. And so once again, thank you very much. This is my website URL on the top, and that is a barcode to send me some Satoshis if you'd like, and support an independent artist. And so yeah, there's a cool photo of me. Shout out to Barry Tallis. Pretty crazy guy. Wanted to go into the depths of the ocean with our cameras to photograph. And so yeah, peace. Thanks for watching. Hopefully some of these ideas really can help you, because I don't know. I feel like someone needs to say it. Like, you can ask for permission. You can engage with the world in your own unique way. You don't have to play the game like the same way as everyone else. Like, there's so many different ways that you can engage on the streets, and there are no rules. There are no rules in street photography. So go out there and play, and yeah, explore the front lines of life. Peace.